very hostile environment, and she's looking for ways to improve the lives of the veterans and their families.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. Well, good comments, everybody. Thank you for thinking about her this morning. I'm going to share another picture of a famous First Lady in American history.
Mm-hmm.
Who would like to help me understand who this is? Who have I not heard from yet? Dina, are you with us?
She's our teacher. I guess she won't participate.
She's our shadowing teacher. Okay. Oh, yes, I see you on camera. Do you recognize who this is?
Well, I think this is Jackie Kennedy.
Jackie Kennedy, and then she also had a later name after Kennedy. Onassis, yeah. So Jackie Kennedy Onassis, and you'll see from the picture title, she's frequently known in the Western press as Jackie O, right, for Onassis. Oh, yeah. So what do you know about her?
Well, I know that she was John Kennedy's wife. They had 2 children, a boy named John and a girl, Caroline.
Caroline, yeah.
They had one more kid, but he died. And she was, after his death, she married Greek millionaire Aristotle Onassis, and, well, maybe something else, but I cannot remember right now.
Oh, that's very good. You knew probably more about her than I do. Who else would like to add something? Maria, are you there?
I can add just she was born 28th of July in 1929 in New York.
And she was very much associated with New York. She lived much of her life in New York. And what, if you had to think about her as a First Lady, what might have been some of the things she brought to the White House? And the pictures may give you a little bit of a hint. She was very famous for what? Both as First Lady and also as the wife of Aristotle Onassis.
Can I add something, please?
Please, yes. Daria, go ahead.
Well, she contributed much to the art and preservation of historical architecture, and her style, actually, and elegance and grace were just icons for the country and for the world.
Yeah, very much so. She was very interested in the world of art and preservation. I'm looking for one more word that might describe her clothes and her appearance. Daria, what word might I be thinking of?
Well, actually, she's famous for her pink suit, pink clothes, dress, which really became a symbol of her husband's assassination.
Yeah, you're exactly right. The word I was trying to think of was fashion, right? Very well known for her fashion. Yes, Professor Liro's helping us. She was elegant and glamorous. And the word, and Daria, you were exactly right too. She brought a style, and she really brought style itself to the White House. And she's very often, credited with bringing this awareness, this heightened style, along with President Kennedy. Very nice. Good descriptions. And I'm going to share one more photo. This one may be a little bit harder, but this is someone who's very near and dear to us in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
This is another American First Lady. Does anybody recognize her?
No. No. Mm-hmm.
Who said maybe? Somebody said maybe.
She looks like a queen, to say the truth.
She was very regal in many ways, I think. Yeah.
Oh, she was the wife of Lyndon Johnson, right?
Yeah, so she was the wife of Lyndon Johnson. Professor Lira, do you want to tell us a little bit about her?
Well, I'd be happy to, though I think Professor Shestakov is our current expert on Ladybird.
That's partly why I picked her.
Among other things, Professor Shestakov saw her a reproduction of her office. That was when we visited the LBJ Museum. Her name, she was known as Ladybird Johnson, and her real name was Claudia. But when she was an infant, one of her nanny said that she was as beautiful as a ladybird, and the name stuck, and she was called Ladybird all her life. And she was a great, she supported many charitable and public causes, but what she is most famous for, at least in Texas, is for her interest in wildflowers. And she organized the effort to beautify the highways in Texas, and to the point where the state highway department would plant seeds along the highways. And in the springtime in central Texas, the highways are ablaze with bluebonnets and primrose and these flowers, which are called Indian blankets.
Yes.
She was interested in beautification.
Professor Marston, would you like to add anything?
Yes, I can hear, every time you say ladybird, I hear her sweet southern drawl saying, plant a tree, a shrub, or a bush.
I remember it driving in the southeast, in the Carolinas, and in Virginia, the highways. Texas, we have bluebonnets and primrose, but there they have cosmos. They have miles and miles of cosmos in those wonderful pastel colors. Ooh, thank you, Ladybird.
And here's a highway picture for folks to see.
Beautiful.
Oh my goodness. That's what it looks like.
That's what it looks like in the spring. And Professor Liro talked about the bluebonnets. Those are the flowers. I had never seen them until I came to Texas, and now they're planted all along the highway.
Bluebonnets are lupines,
yes,
which grow in Russia.
And so, as Joe said, thank you very much, Ladybird, for all of those gifts. We want to finish up, spend just a few minutes on our Gettysburg text, and then we're going to ask each of you to start telling us about some well-known events in Russia. But I wanted to start off with just a little bit more work with our text by Sarah Vowell, and hopefully you'll see a text that is loading on your screen now called Soybean. Can everybody see that text?
Yeah. Yes.
Very nice. I see Raykan is here with us. I haven't heard or seen that person. Is that another one of our teachers?
No, she's not the teacher. She's our colleague.
Our colleague. Can we see or hear you? Is it Rayhan? Rayhan. Is your camera or microphone on, Rayhan?
The microphone, I guess she's had problems with microphone.
She's had problems with microphone. All right. I see who's on the screen. Dadia, I see you again. Do you want to read a little bit for us? Can you see the text? It begins, "The Gettysburg Address is more than a eulogy." Do you want to do some reading for us? Read it aloud?
Yes, of course, surely. So, the Gettysburg Address is more than an eulogy. It's a sobbing, versatile little problem solver that can be processed into seemingly infinite ingenious products. In this speech, besides cleaning up the founding father's slavery mess by calling for a new birth of freedom, Lincoln comforted grieving mothers who would never bounce grandchildren on their knees and ran for election at the same time. Lest we forget, he came to Washington from Illinois. He had a little Mayor Daley in him too. Clinton, the politician, needed the winners at Gettysburg, and on the part of politician ear, he wanted to remind the people explicitly that they could win the war if they just held on.
Very good. I like that. They could win the war if they just held on. Let's think about that paragraph a little bit. So we remember that Sarah Vowell, the author, has come to Gettysburg. It's an anniversary of the Gettysburg Address in November, and she's thinking about the address, right? The famous speech that dedicates the cemetery at Gettysburg. Let's flip over to Svetlana. Sarah Vowell says, "This address is more than just a eulogy, it's a soybean." What does she mean by that, Svetlana?
Well, that's actually that I didn't understand quite well, because eulogy means a praising speech. So it means that address is more than a praising speech, but he called it also a little problem solver.
Yeah, there's the key.
I don't know what did he mean by soybean here, because there must be a figurative meaning of the soybean, which I'm not aware of. Which is it?
You are exactly right. Yes, and a soybean. The figurative meaning of a soybean is you can make it into many things. So it's pretty bland, it's pretty plain, but you can make it in, you can put it in salads, you can make it into tofu, and it absorbs any flavor of the other foods around it, you know, but it's a problem solver. You got it. It's a figurative meaning that it can be many things to many people. And yes, Professor Lero said you can put it in soup, you can put it in sauces. So it can be, if you're a grieving mother, this speech will help you as a grieving mother.
Console. It will console you.
It will console you. If you're a politician, this speech may have sounded like an election speech.
Yeah.
And you see the examples that they give here. So he needed this speech to do a lot of things, right? So it was a soybean. He needed it to taste this way for some people and taste this way for other people and this way for other people still. And how long was the speech, Svetlana? Was it 10,000 words long? How long is the
it was quite short. It was quite short. And
a little over 200 words.
Yeah, quite short. And I don't remember where I read about this, probably in one of the documents that you gave to read.
that first at the meeting, at the gathering, it wasn't noticed so much. But then the next day when people read it, they started to realize the meaning and the the importance of what was said.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So everybody was there. Remember, I told you last time that Lincoln's delivery of the speech wasn't very good. He had a very high-pitched voice, and it's very hard to project when you have a higher-pitched voice. And he spoke very quickly, right? And it was only when the reporters who copied down the speech started printing it in the newspaper the next day that people began to realize how important and significant a speech it was. And so some of the words that Sarah Vowell uses to describe it were versatile, right? It does many things. It was ingenious because it was very short, but it spoke to so many audiences, and it was really poetry, right? It's written in paragraphs, but the language is so beautiful, right? So when he talks about slavery and overcoming slavery and what the northern forces are fighting for, he doesn't use the word slavery. He doesn't talk about the terrible war. He talks about a new birth of freedom. And many of the phrases in the Gettysburg Address, we all know by heart, right? Americans will just know these phrases. Professor Marston, is there a phrase from the Gettysburg Address you know and use quite a bit?
Mm-hmm. I always like the opening line, 87 years ago, because I think this is a masterful way to start, because it puts something in an historical context. And although I don't say those words very often, I have begun a lot of talks that I've given by making an historical framework. And so it's always that opening that rings out. And I can imagine that most people at Gettysburg didn't even hear that. And I don't know if you've mentioned this already, Professor Smith, but one of the things that I noted was that the person who spoke before him went on and on for, I think over 2 hours. And then people weren't even comfortable in their places, and he finished.
Yeah, so Lincoln was preceded by a well-known speaker, and his speech was, as Professor Marston said, 2 hours or more. And so people were very, part of what they were shocked by was Lincoln's brevity. The fact that he really only spoke for about 2 minutes. And as Svetlana said, they really didn't get the sense for the importance of the speech until they saw it written down. Professor Lero, you talked a little bit about Mayor Daley. Sarah says that Lincoln had a little bit of Mayor Daley in him. Can you help us there?
Mayor Daley was, and now I'm blank on his first name, John Daley.
Yeah.
Is that right, John Daley? Mayor Daley was the mayor of Chicago for a long time, and he was a particularly brilliant politician. He knew how to make the system work, and when Sarah Vowell says he had a little Mayor Daley in him too, that's high praise, but it's also a bit of a backhanded compliment.
Yeah.
You all know this expression, a backhanded compliment.
Great phrase.
A backhanded compliment, which means that Mayor Daley may have been a brilliant politician, but he was also unscrupulous, that he manipulated and maybe brushed against the edges of the law. And I think that Lincoln was that way too, that he was also he could be a ruthless politician at times. And Saraval, you know, we have our image of him is that he was a saint and a good and noble character, but he was also a shrewd and calculating lawyer, and don't you ever forget it. Just like Mayor Daley.
Just like Mayor Daley. And that's the perfect segue to our next paragraph. Who wants to? Who would like to volunteer to do some reading? Now, who have we not picked on yet? Let's see. Aliesa, did you read the last one?
Okay.
Why don't you go ahead, read all the way down to the last sentence. I'll read the last sentence because it has some bad language in it. So I'll read that.
Privately, Lincoln had mixed feelings about Gettysburg because he's certain that the war would have ended right here if only General Meade had not let General Lee get away. According to a letter written right after the battle, Lincoln is deeply mortified that Meade and his noble army had expended all the skill and toil and blood up to the ripe harvest, and then let the crops go to waste. Because Lincoln is a good man, he does not weigh this in front of the families who came to the cemetery to hear that their loved ones shall not have died in vain. Because he is a good politician, he looks on the bright side. Though I personally... Okay.
No, go ahead. If you'd like to read it, you can read it.
Well, though I personally suspect that in Lincoln's first draft, the line about how it is for us to live and rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced, was simply goddamn me.
Yeah, very nice. So Professor Lero said that Lincoln was a shrewd and calculating politician, right? So he gets up, he gives a remarkable speech, but behind the scenes there's all sorts of politics, there's all sorts of give and take going on. And behind the scenes, Lincoln is very mad that General Meade, who's the general in the North, remember, lets General Lee, who's the general in the South, escape from the battle. And so there will be 2 more years of war. And it was generally seen that General Meade won the Battle of Gettysburg, the North won the Battle of Gettysburg, the South began retreating, but that Meade did not do all he could to capture or kill the Southern general. And look at all of the wonderful language, right? These dead shall not have died in vain, a wonderful phrase from the Gettysburg Address. And the whole point of this cemetery dedication, remember, is for Lincoln to rally and as Professor Lero said, be something of a politician. So when he says, it is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. He really is being a little bit of a politician and saying, we dedicate this ceremony, we think about the many men and some women who died here, and but we need to keep fighting. We need to keep moving forward in the cause against slavery.
I would like if I could, Professor Smith, I'd like to ask about this next to the last sentence. It is for us the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. Ladies, look at these words, the unfinished work. What is the unfinished work that he's talking about? What are we talking about? The unfinished work. Who has an idea? What is the unfinished work? Danya?
Unfinished.
Svetlana?
Well, unfinished. Oh, they haven't won the war by that time yet.
What?
They haven't won the war. They hadn't won the war by that time yet.
Okay.
So they had to. So that they had to finish it. They had to win.
Okay.
The war.
Svetlana says that the unfinished work is to win the war. Anyone else have an opinion? Alyessa, Maria.
And abolish slavery. Abolish slavery as well.
Okay.
I think.
And anyone else? Anyone else? Win the war, abolish slavery. What's the unfinished work? What's the unfinished work? So far we have two ideas. Win the war, finish slavery. What's the unfinished work?
What else could it be?
Well, okay. Well, it's in the address. It's in the Gettysburg Address, right at the end.
I don't have the text with me.
Okay, well, that's all right. We'll piece it together.
Okay.
In the war.
Try to.
The unfinished work is to preserve the Union. The unfinished work is to preserve the Union. That the government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. To preserve the Union. I think that's right. And does everyone else see that? That's the unfinished work. To preserve the Union.
And Professor Lero's quoted the last line, which is so poetic as well, right? Government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth, is how the speech ends. Professor Lero, did you memorize that speech in school?
When I was a child, of course. Oh, yes, yes, yes.
And Professor Marston?
Of course. And you, did you memorize it?
Yes, partly because I lived in Gettysburg.
Oh yeah, that'll do it.
We couldn't not know the speech. Before we leave this, I wanted to share one more photo with you. One of the problems with this event was how long ago it occurred. There was no recording of this speech, right? There were no tape recorders. There were no handheld iPhones with their recording apps. The reporters who were present were scribbling down the speech as Lincoln said it. But as I mentioned, he spoke very quickly. And in fact, several of them wrote down slightly different versions of the speech. And it was only in the years that followed that we have a definitive version of the speech. And it really wasn't until much later that we even discovered we actually did have a photograph of the event. Where I have my arrow right here on the page, you know, interestingly enough, we always remember Lincoln in his hat. The photo we believe that exists of Lincoln at the time he gave the Gettysburg Address shows Lincoln right here in the middle of the crowd without his hat, his famous hat. So there was in fact a picture of him at the event. He is not giving his speech in this picture, but there was at least one picture taken, we believe, that is authentic from that day in November 1863 when he gave the famous address.
And if you are not aware of it, you can blow that picture up in the viewer. If you look at the bottom gray bar. At the very bottom of the picture, you'll see a magnifying glass with a percentage. And if you click on the little up and down arrows, you can choose to make it bigger. I found it very satisfying to look at this at 100%. So at some point you may want to know how to do that.
Well, thank you all. Very good discussions of Gettysburg, and I hope we impressed upon all of you too that one of the features of culture, right, and we have talked about this word several times, or one of the definitions of culture is or are those experiences that individuals share. So for many who did not grow up in U.S. North America, the Gettysburg Address is a speech. It might be a famous speech. You could look up and read about it. But you'll notice how the speech played a role in the lives of Professor Lero and Professor Marston and myself. We all knew the speech. We all had to memorize it in school. We all have very fond memories and feelings and knowledge about and this speech. And as all of you come to a very high level of linguistic skill, we think one of the things these discussions do is help you come to a very high level of cultural skill as well. Now you get to share some of your shared experiences with us. So, for example, I'm willing to bet. Go ahead, Professor Marston.
I'm sorry, I just can't keep my mouth shut. I want to know if there's a similar document that our Russians have had to learn in school that they might compare this to.
Ah, yeah, good question. Is there a famous speech that all of you, or a famous bit of oratory that all of you might be familiar with, that you just, it's part of your schooling in Russia?
No, I cannot remember. We memorize poems.
Right, and you all know Pushkin far better than we do.
Okay, yeah.
Of course.
Hopefully.
When we get to our section on poetry, we're always going to ask all of you to help us learn more about Russian poetry. That's an interesting question, and you know, honestly, outside of the Gettysburg Address, Professor Marston, what other, or Professor Lero, what other items might we all have memorized or learned by heart? Not a lot, but there's probably some others.
Well, I can still recite, the quality of mercy is not strained, it droppeth as the gentle rain upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed, and blessed him, etc. This is from Shakespeare, from The Merchant of Venice. What else do I know from my childhood? That may be it. Surely there's more, Professor Marston.
Jan, bail us out here.
I have little snippets of poetry which I didn't memorize in school, but my mother did. So hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year is one of those snippets. And it's from the Charge of the Light Brigade.
The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere.
That's
Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, yeah.
And we probably all memorized that, I don't know. Or at least we were familiar with it. And that was at the beginning of the Revolutionary War.
I have some... Go ahead.
Professor Lero, you probably memorized a lot of that.
I did, and I did, and I'm also thinking I have stuff in Polish that I have memorized. I have like the songs and prayers and sayings. Kim ty jesteś Polak mały, jak twój znak orzeł biały. What are you? I'm a little Pole. What's your symbol? A white eagle.
I love that. Well, if you get me going, I can also do quite a bit of French poetry, which I studied much more than English poetry. But let's not go there.
And I think we'll save, I know we do a poetry day later in the semester too, so we'll come back, I'm sure. Well, who is going to start off with their historical reports? Who would like to volunteer? I see we have something up for Stalingrad. Who's going to do Stalingrad?
That's me, actually. Me.
Okay. I'm going to give you the presenter control. There you go.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you about the Battle of Stalingrad. Why? The reason why. Well, it was the turning point. It is believed to be the turning point of the Second World War. So this battle carries great importance, and it was one of the largest battles in the human history as well, and it lasted for 192 days. So that's a lot. And why was it important for both Hitler and Stalin to win the battle? Because Stalingrad was the major industrial and communication center in the Soviet Union in the South. And as you see, it was important because Hitler was going to cut Russia from its oil supplies, which lay in Caucasus Mountains. And, well, so strategically, it was very important. And the battle started somewhere in August, the 17th of July, 1942, and finished in February. And it was characterized by severe fighting. Germans called it a rat war, because when they managed to capture the city, they captured 90% of the city. Russian soldiers fought so fiercely, they fought in the sewers. There was a battle for each building, for a staircase. And there are places which were captured by one or another side several times, like 14 times. I was going to show you a famous place. Sorry, it's I can't see it here now. Sorry, it's Mamayev Kurgan. Yes, it's Motherland. It's Mamayev Kurgan, which was recaptured many times by the Russian soldiers, who didn't want to give the ground. There was also a famous house, Pavlov's house. It went down into history because it was, they didn't give it up for 2 months, something like that. And now you can see the monument. It was rebuilt later, and you can visit the place and see it. And this is how it looked like. Sorry, then at the end of the battle.
Wow.
Well, in short, it's all, but I can add, sorry, I've lost you. I can add more details if you like, if I have got time. But in short, this is about it.
And the statue there on Mamayev Kurgan is very famous. Can you talk about that statue, Svetlana?
Yes, it's the statue was erected to honor the soldiers who fell there, who gave their lives. And I'll read a little bit about this combat on Mamayev Kurgan. Fighting on Mamayev Kurgan, a prominent blood-soaked hill above the city, was particularly merciless. The position changed hands many times. The division was the 13th Guards Rifle Division, assisted to retake Mamayev Kurgan and Railway Station Number 1 on September the 13th. What are the statistics? The lifetime expectancy for the soldier during the Stalingrad battle was 1 day, 24 hours.
Wow.
And for an officer, for a Russian officer, only 3 days.
3 days.
And a huge amount of people just lost their lives there. And it was one of the bloodiest and one of the greatest battles ever fought, ever in history.
I have a question for you, Svetlana. And that's about the word kurgan. What does that word mean?
It's hill.
Hill. And
yeah.
A hill.
A burial, probably. A burial of...
a burial mound.
Yes, a burial mound. A burial mound, yes. Because still bones can be found there. Bones and the bits of broken rifles and weapons. And like they were found a German soldier who shot Russian soldier, and they were killed both also by the and a shell landed on them. You know, it was a real massacre. What was going on there?
A kurgan is kind of historically in prehistory. It's a burial mound, and there are many kurgans in Russia and in Eastern Europe that mark the site where prehistoric tribes would bury their dead, and so it's a particularly moving name for this site. Thank you, Svetlana.
Oh, this is how it looks, the monument.
and who does for Professor Marston, Svetlana? Can you tell who the monument symbolizes?
What does it symbolize?
Yeah.
Well, it symbolizes. Well, I will try to invent what it symbolizes. Well, probably the unity of our people and their resolution to fight to the end, because they were told by their leader at the time not to step back, and they were prepared to die there, but not to give up their land.
Mm-hmm. What is the name? What is the name of this What is the name of this monument?
Motherland.
Motherland.
Yeah. That's she symbolizes our motherland.
Yeah. Very nice. Wonderful. And did you mention how many Russians died at Stalingrad, Svetlana? I said
I didn't. I didn't.
In Gettysburg, 51,000 died, and that's generally considered the bloodiest battle on U.S. soil. But I think in Stalingrad the number is 500,000, right? At least.
Yeah, I've got this statistic somewhere, but the losses were tremendous. And the statistic is not precise because different sources give different figures. But I'll try to find. Well, I know that the Russian army consisted, before the battle, more than 1 million people, as well as German army, led by Paulus, but the losses, it is estimated that around 750,000 soldiers from the German army died, and nearly 500,000 Russians.
Okay. So huge numbers compared to Gettysburg, 10 times, 20 times.
Yeah.
Very, very nice. And also something that, as you said, the turning point of the war, the high water mark for the Germans, that was as far as they got. And the city is, of course, today no longer called Stalingrad. What's it called for Professor Marston?
Volgograd.
Volgograd, yeah.
The city on the river Volga.
Right.
The city on the river Volga. Mm-hmm.
Very nice. Well, thank you. Excellent report. Excellent topic. Told us quite a bit about a very famous event in Russian history. Professor Marston, was that an experience you knew about prior to this morning, or any some of the details about?
Yes, I have read quite a bit about it, and yet I learned so many new things. This was very well done, Svetlana.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, very much so. Who would like to go next? Today you get to lecture to us. Daria, do you have a report ready?
My mic was off. Yes, we have. So this is the first picture. Do you see that on the screen?
Svetlana, can you go ahead and pass the globe? Perfect. Yes. Ah, excellent. Tell us about this gentleman, Daria.
So I want to tell you about Yuri Alexeyevich Gagarin. It's the first man in space. Actually, and this is his photo on the screen. I would like to share all the photos right away because I won't do it then. So this is the first one. The next one is a photo of his spacecraft. And another one is a photo on some documents. This one. I would like to share a video with you. It's in English too, and if you want, you can look at it then afterwards. He was a Soviet pilot and cosmonaut. Actually, he was the first man in space, like I said. And he was the first human to journey into outer space. He used his own spacecraft. It's Vostok first, and actually he became an international celebrity. And Gagarin awarded many medals and titles, including Hero of the Soviet Union and the nation's highest honor. But unfortunately, that spacecraft, Vostok first it was called like that. That spacecraft ended in a fatal crash, and later Gagarin became deputy training director of the Cosmonaut Training Center outside Moscow. Actually, his childhood was really poor, and he was born in an ordinary family. His parents worked on a collective farm. His father was a carpenter and a bricklayer, and his mom, Anna, was a milkmaid. Actually, at that time, all the Soviet Union suffered from German occupation, and they lived in a village of Klushna. which was occupied in November 1941 too. And there are two ways of saying what happened with their family then. The first version says that some officer took over the Gagarin residence and offered them to live in a little mud hut next to their previous house. But another version says that Gagarin's family just fled east to the Ural Mountains, and then they came back after the war ended. Well, Gagarin had a really brilliant career. After graduating from the technical school in 1955, the Soviet Army drafted Gagarin. He had really many recommendations, so he passed many trainings and elections, and he took part in many training programs, and he took first places in those trainings, so he was chosen for further training as well. Well, he was also a favored candidate by his peers, and when the 20 candidates were asked for voting, so everybody voted for him. He kept physical fit throughout all his life, and he was a keen sportsman. You probably don't know, but he was an excellent ice hockey player, and he was a basketball fan and coached some industrial technical school teams. And even he was a referee for some time. So on 12th April in 1961, Agrode Vostok first, this is his spacecraft, he became both the first human to travel into space and around all the orbit of the Earth. So his nickname was Heber. They just called him like this. So they kept connection. They kept in touch. Some sources have claimed that Gagarin commanded during this flight. I don't see any God up here. It's a rather funny phrase, but actually it didn't appear in a common broadcast. Just people say that he didn't say this word. So after the flight, Gagarin became a world-class celebrity, as I said, feeling widely aboard. And he visited then Italy, Germany, Canada, Brazil, Japan, Egypt, and Finland. Unfortunately, he died pretty young. It happened on 27 March 1968. And actually, there are two versions of the death. The first one says that probably he had a wrong date about his air conditioning in the craft, and he was in the craft with his companion. The name of his companion is Vladimir Serogin was his companion. So the craft had wrong data about outside conditions and air and humidity. So probably they took the wrong attitude and their spacecraft just crashed. So the second version of his death is the craft had bad
technical issues,
bad technical equipment, and some windows, or how we say, some windows kept opening sometimes, and one of the windows just opened, and some vacuum pulled in, and they died. This is the second version. And there was a very interesting fact in his social life. He had some problem right from the peak of his career. It was like a scandal. It was a situation with another woman when he was caught by his wife with another woman, and he tried to slid away. So he jumped out of the window from the second floor and broke his eyebrow. Until the death, he had a little scar on his eyebrow. That's all, I think. And I would like to add that we have a huge heritage. We have Gagarin museum to all astronauts. It's in Moscow. Then, aside from the short stature at 1.57 meters, then we have some monument in London. This is stature near Admiralty Arch, and actually Gagarin was printed on some coins and notes in 2001.
Very nice.
Yeah, and the last thing, recently there was his 50th anniversary. It was in 2011, and all the world actually kept this event, and even you could see on television they broadcasted a video from the space again, and some spaceman said that there was a great day of Happy Yuri's night. So that's it, I think. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much.
Very nice. And I have been to the museum in Moscow, and there's also a little Gagarin house right there, isn't there, where he lived? When he lived in Moscow, I think there's a house museum as well to Gagarin right there by the Space Museum in Moscow.
Yes, no, he didn't live there. They said he lived in a little town. The name of the town is Luzhino. I don't know. It's
Right.
in English. I think it's Pushino, right?
Yeah, and this was the house where he lived as an adult, I think.
No, no way.
Oh, very nice. Any questions, Professor Liro or Marston?
No, except is the monument to Gagarin, that wonderful stainless steel sculpture of him standing with his arms, that's still standing in Moscow, yes?
That's right by the museum.
Right by the museum, yeah.
And I would go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I remember quite vividly his first flight. I was still a kid, and my family was very interested in flying, and we were especially impressed with the going into space. And so even though we know the Russians were our enemies, it was excuse me, it was very exciting to see how inspired Americans became in this competition of the space race. So I think he's a heroic figure. He's very handsome, and there's a lot of charm that comes out right off the page. When I look at that picture, it takes me back to when I was a kid.
Well, Daria, thank you. Very nice report. I think we have time to do one more report today before our time ends. Alyssa, do you have a report ready?
Oh yes, I'm the only one who's left with his report.
Daria, can you pass the globe to Alyssa?
Pass the globe.
The presenter.
Okay. How she can do this?
Just draw it from the line.
Drag it.
What is it? What is this? It's about the guys.
Why don't we watch a minute or two of the video here?
Саша, передай, пожалуйста, мячик Олесе. Мячик передай, пожалуйста. Потяни его. Напротив Даши есть такой мячик. Потяни его на Олесю. Okay, I'm just explaining what she's supposed to do to make Olesa the presenter.
There, Alessa's presenter now. Perfect.
Very funny sounding in Russian. Okay.
A little technical help in Russian.
It was like in a kindergarten. Pass the ball.
Yeah, pass the ball, though.
Okay.
You choose the picture.
Okay. To share. I have to share a file. I forgot what I should do.
Yeah, so under share, you'll share a file.
Okay, thank you.
Share, потом свой файл с компьютера загружаем.
Yeah, okay, and so I'm done.
Link.
I'd like to, I have chosen one event that was very painful for the Russian people. It was also from the Second World War, and the event is the Siege of Leningrad, and which is also known as the Leningrad Blockade. It lasted almost 2.5 years, and it cost the lives of an estimated 1 million city residents. It began on September in 1941, when German troops completed their encirclement of the city. Hunger and the biggest troubles in the city were hunger and cold. And by the end of September, the city's oil and coal supplies were exhausted, and that meant that the city was without any central heating. And as the winter came, water pipes froze and broke, and the residents were without any water that they could drink. Food supplies were cut, and by November, individual rations were lowered to 1/3 of the daily amount needed by an adult. Well, for example, I'd like to show the bread card, as it was called in Leningrad. Bread card for December. Here it is. Every day, every person can get 125 grams of bread, which was a daily portion. And even this bread, it was 50% consisted of sawdust and other admixtures. And here's one more picture that shows the standards for each person in Leningrad. Bread portion measures for December. The first is those people who work, they got 250 grams, and all other people, including children, they got only 125 grams of bread each day, and that was all. And that winter of 1941 and 1942, it was the hardest winter for all people, and thousands died exactly in this period. Well, the winter had one positive effect. It froze Lake Ladoga to the city's east and created a lifeline over which caravans of trucks hauled a meager amount of food and supplies. Here's the picture of that road. It was this road was named the Road of Life. Here is a picture, Road of Life. Well, that's it. It was very dangerous. There was the risk of vehicles becoming stuck in the snow or sinking. You see broken ice, and also the broken ice was caused by the constant German bombardment. And because of the high winter death toll, and this route was also known as the Road of Death. Well, however, the lifeline did bring military and food supplies, and it took civilians and wounded soldiers out, allowing the city to continue resisting their enemy. Well, the loss of population through death and evacuation increased the strain and on the Romanian inhabitants, and food rations were increased and the city's situation stabilized by the next winter. And by January 1944, the Red Army had pushed the German army beyond Leningrad, allowing the city to celebrate the end of that siege. Well, I guess that's all I can tell for now. That's all.
That's very nice.
Excellent.
Excellent.
I don't think it was not very nice. It was very painful. I guess it was a very painful experience for all Russian people because, well, it was even reports of cannibalism during this siege, and it was very painful. Thank you.
Very nice. And this is a perfect example of an event that every Russian knows. And if you were to ask in America, there would not be a lot of knowledge about the siege of Leningrad. Many Americans would never have heard of it. We don't really learn about it in American schools. So this is a wonderful example of a cultural event that it's very important for us as citizens of the world to know, but is very remote from our experience and not really in our education. Professor Lero, did you learn about the siege of Leningrad growing up?
No, no. I had no idea it existed, but it's also it's a remarkable story. Maybe I think in many ways it's one of the most heroic wartime stories that I know of.
Yeah. Professor Marston, were you aware of the Battle of Stalingrad in your youth? I'm sorry, the siege of Leningrad, sorry.
No, I was not. Although I did read about it before I began working with any Russian, and I really felt it was stunning and heroic. And that was an example of human endurance against all odds.
Well, thank you for these very impressive and very impactful reports, everybody. We have about 3 minutes left here, Professor Marston. We are going to move to the theme of politics, and I'm going to let Professor Marston introduce that very briefly and tell you what you'll be working on as we go forward.
Mm-hmm. So, beginning next week, we're going to look at some of the documents that frame the way the American government is expected to work. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't received it already, you will be getting a series of articles and videos, mm-hmm. Which I would like for you to listen to and read and process before you come to class. So these are going to be things like the Declaration of Independence, mm-hmm. and the Constitution, and the balance of power between the three branches of government. And some of the things that I'm asking you to study are from some famous school children's songs called Schoolhouse Rock. Schoolhouse Rock, like rock music. And they're songs designed as memory devices. And so I've included a couple of those that I think are pertinent to what we are doing. And one tells about how laws are made in Congress, and it's called I'm Just a Bill. And it talks about the process of a bill as it goes through to become a law in the end.
And that was actually a part of my childhood, Professor Marston. We watched those videos in school. I'm just a bill sitting here on Capitol Hill. Yes, yes, that's it. And you probably could sing the whole thing. I will sing along with it next week.
Oh, I can't wait.
So what I want you to do with these documents and these videos is I'm giving you a choice. You will either try to see if there is something in your Russian experience, a document which you can compare them to, or a practice of government, or a theory of government, or or you can ask a question about that, anything that you don't understand. And if that doesn't work for you, then I would ask you to summarize very briefly each of the texts and videos that come along. And you can choose to mix and match. But I'm going to ask you to become familiar with the text or videos, because that is the basis for our continued discussion of how the federal government is supposed to work, and why the Congress is at an impasse right now. This is an historic moment in the American government. So we will be looking at that, and after that, we will look at the Bill of Rights, which is part of the Constitution, a series of amendments, and particularly the right to bear arms. That's about guns. And the third session will be about voting rights, the right to vote, and the current questions in our society that make that particularly timely. So I'm going to ask you to push the questions, because if you look at these documents, we're going to see that they are living documents that keep on changing, even though they were originally designed so long ago. And you will see how the Supreme Court fit into that as well. So you should be getting something about that later the same day for us, but maybe in the morning for you. And if you don't, please let me know, and I will arrange to send it to you. So thank you very much. I enjoyed this session today so much, and I really have missed being with you while I was off the grid. So see you next week.
Well,
yes.
Thank you all for a wonderful session this morning, and we'll see everybody next week. Great session this morning.
Oh, thank you.
Very informative.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye. See you next week. Bye.
See you.
What a pleasure it is to be in this class.
This is good.
Excellent today.
This is good. Excellent today.
And so we are back at 9:50, right?
I will not be joining you for that session today.
Okay.
Okay.
But I will be, and so Joe, I'll see you on Thursday.
And what are we doing Thursday?
Oh, I was afraid you were going to ask me that because I wasn't there.
Now I can't. I'm looking at my notes. I can't. Thursday. Oh, we're continuing reports. No,
yes.
Let me think. Yeah. We're continuing their presentations. We only had 2 presentations last time. Okay, cool. Good. That'll be easy. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
See you real soon. Joe, do you have any receipts? I wanted to remind you if you need to mail me receipts.
Okay.
From time in Austin and mileage. If you can
I do. Should I email that to you or what?
Probably. I think they're going to want the originals for receipt.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and send you a thing. I've lost 1 or 2, and but I will just eat those. That won't be a problem.
Okay. And we'll need to do mileage for you twice up here and back, right?
Right. And I've got those. I took odometer readings.
Okay.
I don't know if you're going to use those or the standard mileage thing. Well, whatever.
Okay.
Could you send me, email me a postal address?
Yes. I will drop that to you in email. Sounds perfect.
Okay. Terrific. I'll do that.
Wonderful. Well, good. I'm going to log off here for a few minutes, and then we'll be back at 9:50.
Okay. I'll see
you
you
then.
See you later this week. Bye. Thank you. Good session today.